Fear grip African leaders that it seems the continent is under dictatorship, that is in relation to the coup in Gabon again. While ECOWAS is looking at Niger, another coup has actually descended. So you keep sit tight, and as we take you down through some of the stories that are dropping on the paper, I am Stella Elisha Dasho, and I'll be doing this together with Rachel Tansey. Good morning.
Morning, Stella.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Rachel. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can follow us live there. Drop your comment, drop your thought of any of the story that is of interest to you. And we will be going straight into the paper, starting with the leadership newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, Leadership and NDLEA are partnering for a drug abuse conference which will take place on 7 November. You can find more details on page 6. Tinubu mourns as Nigeria's national flag designer Akin Kumi dies at 87. We have a trend. Gabon coup. President Tinubu calls for consensus against the spread of contagious autocracy across Africa. You can find more details on page 2. Manufacturers suffer 30% decrease in sales as Naira crisis lingers. You can find more details on the front page and continue on page 7. Reps chide Green Wall over misappropriation of 81 billion naira for tree planting. The big story on the paper, Gabon coup. Fear grips African leaders as continent descends into dictatorship. The writer under the story, Tinubu world leaders condemn coup. Gabon military names General Brice Ogume transition leader. More details of the big story can be found on page 4. Live parasitic worm found in 64-year-old Australian woman's brain. I'm still a PDP member in APC government, says Wike. And on Hajj, Shetima demands review of feeding arrangements. More details can be found on page 6. And then we have a chart that shows the top 10 longest serving African presidents, which you can find more details on page 4. And we can see the transitioning of the former president of Gabon, which is Ali Bongo, and now we are having the military leader, General Brice. And you can find more details inside the paper on page 4, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the blueprint. Still on the first story, amid tension in Gabon, crude oil hit $86 per barrel. With the writer, Tinubu says contagious autocracy spreading in Africa, promises AU intervention in Gabon and Niger. Junta places ousted President Bogu under house arrest, named son for treason. Expect more coup in Africophony West Central Africa coming from Fani Kayode. And I think, Richard, it's important. Let's talk a little about this. We've gotten the opportunity quite a lot. And if you ask my personal opinion about a coup that seems to be spreading, if you recall, Rachel, when we had that in Niger, I said that signals one thing, and that is to show that over the years, Africa is under what we call bad leadership, because that is the only reason why we'll be having coups spreading, most especially in West African countries. Just when we thought we were trying to see how we can handle that of Niger, here Gabon is taking over.
Yeah.
And I'm not a foreseer. I'm not seeing what the future holds, but from the looks of things, it seems to be spreading. It seems to be having a ripple effect. And I think the high time ECOWAS AU come together and say what can be done to put these leaders. Now, if you take a proper look at the leadership, we're seeing about 4 leaders that have been lined as the longest serving leaders. I begin to ask question, why is there no election in this country? Why are we having just one person ruling for a long period of time? Why are we having certain leadership not being open to be flexible, to change certain things that are not being favorable with the people? We keep forgetting the fact that when we say we want to celebrate democracy in a country, it's not all about let's do election, but then are the people being carried along? You remember we said, what is the body language of the people in Niger presently when the military took over? They were happy, celebrating. That signals one thing, that is to say that the leaders we've been having over the civil, talking about civil rule, they're not doing us anything good. No wonder the military are taking over. I will say we are celebrating and the military should keep taking over. Of course not. Nobody wants to live under dictatorship when you're being dictated. What to say, how to act, where to go, your fundamental human rights are being cut short. Nobody wants that. But we're looking forward to seeing where African leaders will sit and see. We're tired of them going for tourist sites. Sit down, let us see how can we fix our home. It seems to be
Yes.
breaking out.
True.
That is just a signal I am seeing. So even though we're seeing that ECOWAS is promising AU to do something, but I'm just hoping that this doesn't get to spread. It's less than a month when yeah, I think it's a month already, because Niger coup was in 26th of July when the president was being pushed aside and then the military have taken over. So we hope something will be done that this doesn't spread, because not only will this affect the continent, but then we are seeing already the price of crude oil is beginning to get high as a result of that. So we hope something will be done to attend to this issue as fast as possible.
So you said that it truly shows there have been bad government, and African countries haven't been having it well, especially down here in West Africa. With the government and the policies that have been made, we can see how we are topping the charts when it comes to poor economy and then struggling level of poverty. However, there has never been a guarantee that military leadership will take a country out of poverty or make it better. But I keep saying that democracy put us in a position of flexibility. But over the years, what we've been having, I keep saying it, we are yet to have selfless leaders. We probably had a few, they didn't last that long, and we've just been having a reign and reign of leaders that have proven to put themselves first, power drunk, and all of that, because it is a system of government that gives room for check and balance. It thinks accountability, transparency, and above all, it gives room for things to be amended, corrected, and reviewed and changed if it's not working for the economy. However, this has been the problem in Africa, leadership, and it's not even about democracy. So now for us having autocracy coming back and dictatorship, it doesn't feel like the right way anyway, because whether we like it or not, it's still backwardness in governance. And if there is backwardness in governance, the economy will definitely struggle, because new policies will come into place that will look like we are going backward, because it's still going to be trial and error, because this military government is not for sure whether they can come and deliver or not. They will still have to be given the same period of time and grace, just like we've been giving the democratic leaders, to see if their policies and what they have in place will definitely work out for people. However, the most exciting part of this story for me is that Tinubu is saying that he's promising AU will intervene in Gabon and Niger, because I keep saying it that ECOWAS, yes, one of the fundamental policies is of course to maintain democracy in a country. However, ECOWAS is not political. It is an economic union, strictly geared with the power to help West African countries grow economically and to improve the standard of living. And that's why in their treaty and their sanction, there is no place for any country taking military action over another country in a situation where the government has been toppled, because it is not about politics. Why the African Union is in a better position to put Gabon straight and Niger. And this is where I am happy that the president is making that statement, promising that the AU will step in for Gabon and Niger, because how many of these military forces will ECOWAS put for these countries? Do they have the resources? We are all struggling African countries, but when African Union in general comes, this is a bigger force and therefore have the better resources and in a better position to put this government into place. So I just truly hope that the Nigerian government will do the right thing, because we are in no position. Of course, we will not take away the fact that our chairman is the chairman of ECOWAS, is our president, but at the same time, we can't take away the fact that let's do the needful and let's place ourselves where it is appropriate and not buy a war that we're not even supposed to buy in the first place. But then we'll wait and see how things unfold concerning the coup in these countries, and I just hope that the appropriate authorities will step in and what is needed to make sure that we are having back a democratic system in these countries, that it will really take place and it will eventually not affect neighboring countries.
Of course, we hope for that. So we keep our fingers crossed, and then we keep our viewers updated with any story that keep unfolding. Still on the Blueprint newspaper, we have on currency swap. CBN repays 5.10 billion euro ahead of Nigeria-China renewal deal. You can find on page 22. Nigerian's flag designer Akubunmi dies at 86 Tinubu months. And coming from Oshun, foreign dogs full of 5-year-old girl from mother's bag devour her. This really sad one. We hope something is being done. You check that story on page 7. Other stories still on the front page of the paper. Over 4,000 children associated with armed conflict in the Northeast set free. More of that story can be found on page 13. 2,670 newly employed graduates celebrate first salary in Yobe. You can find that story on page 7. Adamawa takes delivery of 10 Innoson luxury buses rolled out palliative. You can find more also inside the paper. And on the PIA, oil-bearing communities spoil for war over non-remittance of 3% OPEX. Stakeholders charges NUPRC to enforce compliance. You can find on page 6. We have some few cut-out stories showing what is happening in Gabon, the body language of the people there. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
Salah, before we move to the next paper, over 4,000 children associated with armed conflict in the Northeast set free. And I am begging the government of Nigeria, don't set them free. They need correction for sure, because we don't know the ages of these children. Whatever age they are already mentally affected by conflict. It's not about setting them free. They are not criminals in the first place. These are children that are being manipulated and brought up in that way. So when you say set them free, it's almost like they were imprisoned and then you're freeing them. You can't set them free. This is a juvenile case, and then the Nigerian government, because they've already been introduced into a pattern of life, and they won't just come out of it because you've set them free. So I just hope that the appropriate authorities step in and not set them free, please. You need to rehabilitate them. You need to make sure that they get the right therapy, because these children could have been involved in killing one, because we are talking about age grade from probably as low as 7 when you were strong enough to wield a weapon.
We saw that, I think, sorry to cut you short, I think we saw that one of the students of Plateau State that was traveling to school in Borno that was murdered.
Yes,
I mean, the age was just 7, 8.
The
when
person that shot him, this was barely a teenager. Exactly. And these are people that have been brainwashed and given a new mindset, so setting them free is just, you're just setting out people with the mindset, children that already have the mind of killers already, because these are people that have been put in a way of violence, and that is what they know as it is now. So don't set them free, but rather rehabilitate them and give them the necessary treatment they need. Some of them might be going through one disorder or another. Some of them might be having post-traumatic stress syndrome and all of that. So they need to be taken care of rather than set free as if you're doing them a favor by setting them free. They are still harm to the society. Moving on to the next paper. On this day, again, manufacturers groan as economic indicators falter. Say Naira crunch nearly cripple companies with about 30% decrease in sale. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 10. Stanbic IBTC posts strong half-year performance, grows profit by 121%. Lagos Blue Rail line to commence operation Monday. And a statement coming from Wike, I'm still in PDP, now on national duty in APC government. Says he owes nobody apology for supporting Tinubu. Dares PDP, declares nobody can suspend him. reveals $800 million garnish under, I take that again, but I believe it's about the Blue Line Railway in the FCTA finishing. He promised that he will deliver that by next year. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 10. The big story on this day newspaper, Tinubu on Gabon in talks with world leaders to address spreading autocracy, declares power belongs to people, not barrel of gun. Hold telephone conversation with Canadian Prime Minister on development in Niger and Gabon. Ousted Gabonese president calls for protest. Bongo sound. Okay, I'll take that. There is I think this is an allegation, and then old view on democracy resonate. It says sounds sexy but doesn't work. Old view on democracy resonate. This is a statement concerning coup, and he's saying that it might sound good, but it doesn't work anymore. You can find more details of his statement on page 10. We have Sanwo-Olu Obasa resolved. It is a question, and if you want to know if it has been resolved, you can find more details inside the paper, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper, how traditional medicine can fund Nigeria's yearly budget. You want to know how that can be done? Do well to grab the Guardian and read that on page 6. Democracy in shambles. African government risks financial blockade. FDI squeeze over the rising coups. You can find more. We have a picture story here showing us the map of Africa, and then looking at some of the countries that have been highlighted with, talking about terrorism over there, where we have Mali, Niger, Chad, Sudan, those who have been affected by one insurgent or the other. And then we also have other places which you can take a closer look and see what that means to the African government at a time like this. Nigerian doctors moving to Sierra Leone, the Gambia CMD laments, and he says that they are being paid a very huge amount of money, Richard, in this country. I mean, as high as $4,000 they are being paid in that country. That's like over 3 times or 4 times what you get in your country.
10 times what they get in Nigeria.
You get it. So that is to say that it's not even no longer about them going to other, maybe outside Europe or whatever. They are now within the African countries, and their services are needed. Well, I think this is an assignment to the Minister of Health. He needs to do something to make sure that we have our doctors back in the country. Rep Summon Insurance CEO over 267 billion naira NNH contribution. You can find more of that on page 4. Olatunji Dari looks back at the Guardian. More of that story can be found at the back page of the Guardian newspaper. Lawmakers query agency for using 81.2 billion naira to plant 21 million trees in 11 states. Well, we hope that they give us detailed account of what they use that money. We're seeing diversion of funds into places that shouldn't be. And then we still have the Nigerian flag designer Akigumi dies at 93. I guess the papers are giving us different years. We had 87, 86, and the guidance is telling us at 93. I think it is important that they give the right age, not to mislead people. You can find more of that story on page 5 of the Guardian, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Daily Sun, tailors protest poor power supply and extortion in Abia. You can find details on page 6. The big story, anger, tension, great military coup in Gabon. AU world leaders others rise against Bongo's ouster. Tinubu working with AU to determine next line of action. A statement coming from the presidency. Detained president urges citizens to protest. And on Lagdo Dam, Delta, Anambra, Adamawa, Benue, 8 others to be flooded. A statement coming from the federal government. NSIA stakeholders partner on cancer treatment. Tinubu mourns as Akinkunmi, Nigerian flag designer, dies at 87. Rep summons CEOs of insurance companies over payment that they haven't made so far, and it has been on some of our papers. We see that Lagos target 175,000 passengers daily as Blue Rail line begins. You can find more details of that story inside the paper, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, on the big story which is on Gabon, UN, Commonwealth, others condemn coup Tinubu warns of the spread, with the writer following that story. Power doesn't belong to barrels of gun. Contagious autocracy spreading in Africa, coming from Tinubu. Bongo begs for freedom. Soldiers put ex-leader under house arrest weeks away with her son for treason. You can find more on page 2. We have NULGE urges Tinubu to probe local government allocation diversion. You can find more of that story on page 28, and I think it is important because a lot of local government haven't gotten their pay. Banks fire 110 top executive and others over 80 billion naira fraud. And on the vandalized pipeline, marketers predict more fuel queues. I hope something will be done to curtail that. It seems to be spreading. As of yesterday, it was just in Lagos State and environs, and it seems it will spread if something is not being done about that. We hope to see something positive coming out of that story. And on NIN registration, federal government record 48% of monthly target. Lagos Blue Line Rain begins operation September 4th, which is next week, Monday. Kwankwaso still in NNPP, coming from the legal advisor, contradicting the story. We saw that he has been suspended for 6 months. So you can do well to follow up that story on page 30. Wike DS PDP says nobody can expel me. You can read that political story on page 7. And we have Ogun pastor set lady on fire during spiritual. Alright, I take that story. Ogun pastor set lady on fire during special prayer. You can find more of that on page 4. And this is a special advice to people who keep going to other prayer houses that are not genuine. We've seen something like that happening. You can find more of that on page 4. Cameroon Dam, federal government set up temporary shelters in states. You can find more of that on page 19. We have the picture story where we can see the president together with Olumelu. Possibly they are talking about some economic things that can build the country. So you can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, the big story, Gabon coup. Rule of law must not perish in Africa, Tinubu says. Speaks with Canadian Prime Minister, AU leaders. Macron denounced epidemic of coup in Africa. US, Russia, China, others react. Military detains Bongo's son, names Ukuma, Bongo's cousin, transition leader. You can find more details on page 6. We have a sad story. Son stabs father to death over 70,000 naira in Ogun State. And the conflict, Red Cross records 25,000 persons missing in the Northeast. NSIA stakeholders partner to improve cancer treatment in Nigeria. We are seeing that there are discovery of better treatment for cancer. You can find more details on page 29. Lagos Blue Rail Line commenced commercial operation September 4th. Lagos Assembly may reconsider 12 out of 17 rejected commissioners nominees as GAC meet Sanwo Olu and Obasa. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 5. Police arrest man who threatened traditionalists in Kwara. You can continue with that story on page 20. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Times newspaper. Starting with the big story. Over 267 billion naira workers unremitted contribution missing, with the rider angry rep committee summoned 54 CEOs. Orders them to come personally. The figure is of 2019 alone. 2020 and 2023 still outstanding. Their consequences are with any defaulting CEO, so you can do well to follow up that story on remittance. That's talking about the NHF probe. And we have design of Nigerian flag. Taiwo Akiwumi dies at 84, according to the Daily Times paper. Oil community freight over unpaid 3% funds threaten crisis. You can find more of that story on the front page and continue inside the paper. The shame of education in Edo Delta mushroom schools, and this is not just in these two states. Since we have a lot of mushroom schools across the country in various states, and I think it's really something that should be done. And this is an assignment to the minister to work with the commissioners of education to see how that standard of education can be upgraded. We also have, as another House committee uncovers alleged 81.2 billion naira spent on planting trees. You can find that on page 4. Coup in Gabon, Bogoud troubles call for protest. You can find that story on page 4, and that's all on the Daily Times newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Fashoranti displeased with Adibajo over Afenifere. Oshun APC expels 3 ex-Aribisola's men and 81 others. Wike, I will deliver Abuja Metro Line next year. Protest in Ondo Cross River over NDDC board. Still on the paper, NSIA stakeholders partner on improved cancer treatment. Can find more details on page 6. Obaseki free to fix federal roads in Edo, says minister. The big story on the paper, Tinubu world leaders UN, AU, EU reject Gabon junta. 6th African coup deeply concerning. What African presidents should do by Ayebode, Keshi, and Ogusanwo. You can find what Africans should do and advice coming from these people, starting on the front page and continue on page 4. And we are seeing a timeline concerning what has been going on in Gabon, precisely when it comes to presidency and other African countries, and then we can see that of Gabon. At the downside of the paper, President mourns as national flag designer Taiwo Akinwumi dies. You can find more details on page 8, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
All right, I think at this moment we'd love to take a break, let you through the story, the coup in Gabon, all that's happening in the country, replies coming from Wiki. And also we're saying that the federal government have told the governor of Edo State that he is free to fix the road. We will record that there was a time he was lamenting on the state of the road in Edo State, most especially federal road. So when we come back from the break, we'll open the phone lines and then we get to hear what your contributions are. Please stay tuned with us. Still the Dailies on Echo Television International. We've been looking at quite a number of stories from the coup in Gabon and also Niger, and the president has said he is in talks with Canadian Prime Minister on how they can put a stop to that, and also with the AU to make sure that things are put in order. I still have Rachel Tense with me. Thanks so much, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, our number is displayed on your screen at this moment. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are concerning any of the story that is of interest to you. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us. Try and summarize your point in a minute and let the contribution be relevant to what we are talking about on the paper. And we'll move on now to the next paper, which is the New Telegraph newspaper. The big story there is on subsidy removal. Marketers hit hard, turns to bank for rescue. We have the rider owner of 40 fuel stations now operating only 7. Oil dealers threatening to sue NNPCL over failure to supply the product. And we have bicycle dealers make bricks business as economy bites harder. Well, we remember the federal government said we should turn to using of bicycles, and we've seen that bicycle dealers actually making, bricks business out of it. And we have on fuel scarcity, no reason to panic. Ipman tells Nigerians. NNPCL GCEO Total Energies NGMD meet on how they can resolve the issue of the supply of the fuel in the market. On the story on New Telegraph, we have external debt projected to reach 32.4 trillion naira on exchange rate unification. SCCI to Tinubu remove regulatory obstacles for sustainable growth. More of that story can be found on page 8. Ecological Fund reps query the Great Green Wall use of 81 billion naira for planting trees. You can find on page 2 and 29. Delta OK's 167 billion naira supplementary budget, 10 billion naira social security fund. You can find more of that on page 26 too. Okonjo-Iweala countries face higher inflation risks if open trade is neglected. We can do well to follow up that story on page 5 and 30. Other story on the front page of New Telegraph, we have NLC threatens strike, demand withdrawal of police from NURTW Secretariat. You can find that on page 2. We have Tinubu engages Canadian Prime Minister Trinidad on Niger crisis. You can find on page 3. And still on the issue of Gabon, coup President Bougou seeks help as army takes power. Tinubu working with AU leader on the next line of action, says the presidency, as Commonwealth says action of deep concern. That can be found on page 3 and 4. And we have on brain drain, African countries now offer Nigerian doctors $4,000. CMD tells the rep. NSIA partners expert to improve cancer treatment in Nigeria. More can be found inside the paper. We have a study on the downside of the paper. You can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Matrix newspaper, Sanwo-Olu Lagos Assembly feud. GAC APC chief times weighed in. You can find more details on page 2. Manufacturers ask CBN for forex rate ban to ease bloated, and you can find more details on page 13. Gabon boils as military take over. The rider under the story, ban federal government, Senate, National Assembly, and Constitutional Court. Why we remove Bongo? A statement coming from the junta. Place ousted President Bongo under house arrest, detains son for treason. Name General Bryce as transition leader. We are working with AU to determine next line of action coming from Nigeria presidency. You can start with the details inside the paper. Wike blows hot, reveals why Nigerians didn't vote for Peter Obi, lampoons elite for distorting Abuja master plan, says he's working for Tinubu, not APC, dares PDP to expel him. NNPP crisis, Kwankwaso hails state chairman for upholding party's principle. Sanwo-Olu orders to board Lagos Blue Rail Line as operation commences Monday. Neglecting foreign trade will lead to higher inflation, says Okonjo-Iweala. You can find more details of our statement on page 13. NNPC to discipline staff on the dispensing fuel to customers. You can find more details on page 10. And I hope that they really put in a body out there to discipline people who will do that, because that's one of the problems we have. When you go to a fuel station, they under dispense what you're consuming and they correct the full money per liter. And when motorists drive out, they realize that, okay, if I had taken 20 liters, my tank should have been at this level, but this is not what I'm receiving. So I just hope that something is being done about that. You can find more detail on page 16, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Nigerian News Direct on the Lagos Blue Line rain commercial operators to commence Monday, coming from the Lagos state government. Still on Nigerian News Direct, federal government spent $1.17 billion on debt servicing in the first half of 2023. The big story is on subsidy palliative Ogun, Oyo, Osun, others. Confirmed receipt of 2 billion naira federal government funding as state roll out food aid to ease hardship. The rider flowing the story, Oyo governor declares support for local farmers during purchase. Kwara governor forms 12-person committee to oversee distribution. You can find that on page 4. I remain an unrepentant PDP member, coming from Wike. Osun APC expel 84 members of anti-party activities. We have a picture story here where we can see the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu together with the Minister of Works, Dave Umahi, during the minister's courtesy visit in Lagos during yesterday. You can do well to grab the paper in more detail of story that is of interest to you.
A new national star, siege on NURTW headquarters. NLC threatens to drag police to ILO. You can find more details on page 3. NNPCL records 164 oil theft, 18 pipeline vandalism in 7 days. Troops uncover illegal oil bunkers camp in Imo and Delta State. We have the Debt Management Office rakes in 406.10 billion naira from TB sales in July. This is a report. You can find details on page 13. The big story on the paper, which has been on most of our paper, is on the Gabon coup. And there's a writer under the story that says UN, AU, ECOWAS condemn another military coup in Africa. Tinubu sees concession against spread of contagious autocracy in Africa. And on Imo, Guba, Okorocha, Areremu collapse structure with Anyawu. Woman 20 throws newborn baby into toilet pit in Anambra. So this is a 20-year-old mother doing that. What a sad story. You can find more details on page 12. Nigerian elite distorting FCT master plan, a statement coming from the President Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Wike. You can find more details of the statement on page 10. NEMA seeks evacuation of communities in flood-prone states. Reps Committee accuses insurance coils of non-remittance of 267 billion naira into NHF. Navy arrests 5 stowaways near Lagos and Courage. You can find more details on page 2, and that's all the news on New National Star.
On Daily Independent newspaper, PENCOM to sanction employers remitting contributions with incomplete documentation. Says 41,628 employees not credited over action. Arrest Buhari over alleged autocracy in Igbo land coming from Hurua. You can find more on the front page and continue inside the paper. The Gabon coup, which is a big story. Tinubu opens talks with AU leaders and others on way forward. France, China, Commonwealth, EU condemns overthrown, and then we have the throne bargain speak, asks international community to intervene. General Briggs emerges the leader of Gabon. You can find that on page 29. And we have on tax default, Wike threatening action against highly placed persons. More of the story can be found on page 7. Attacks on Imo citizens cannot stop your defeat, PDP tells Ozodinma. You can find that on page 7. Lagos Blue Rain Line begins operation Monday. Sanwo-Olu slashes fare by 50%. Tinubu Makinde Mon design of Nigeria's flag power Taiwo. You can find that on page 6. Reps uncover how NAGGW spent 81.2 billion naira planting 21 million trees. You can find that inside the paper. Last story on the paper, we have NSIA stakeholders partners to improve cancer treatment in Nigeria. More of the story can be found on page 6. And we have, we won't tolerate sabotage in the National COS Interior Minister. One talking about Nigeria Correctional Service, that they won't tolerate sabotage. You can find that on page 6. And that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On First News newspaper, reps uncover 81.2 billion naira alleged tree planting fraud in Great Green Wall. And on the economy, Tinubu repeating Buhari's mistakes coming from SDP presidential candidate. Osun APC expelled Aribasola factions, ex-chair Adele case aides, and 81 others. And the big story, my wife's son missing, Gabonese president cries out. This is on the coup. Begs for freedom as junta detains him and arrests son for treason. Gabonese celebrate downfall of Bongo's 53-year dynasty that took after his father in leading the country. We're working with AU leaders for concessions response. A statement coming from Tinubu. Don't copy Gabon Army. MURIC wants Nigerian military. Full text of Gabon coups take over speech. We have a picture story showing Gabon citizens celebrating the end of President Ali Bongo's reign and the 53-year rule of his family in the country's capital. We see Libreville, that is on Wednesday yesterday. Nobody can suspend me from PDP. A statement coming from Wike says, I'm working for Tinubu, not APC. Nigerians will have voted Peter Obi if he was better than Tinubu, coming from the FCT minister. African countries now snatching $1,000 offer, coming from the CMD telling the reps. And from the UN Assembly, Tinubu's invitation, bad example, Timmy Frank tells US president. At the downside of the paper, alleged impeachment court fixes date for judgment in Philip Shaibu and Obaseki suit. Son hacks 100-year-old father to dead in Ogun over 70,000 naira. And for sport, Monaco signs Balogun from Arsenal in £34 million. You can find more details inside the paper, and that's all the news on First News newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the world of business from Business Day newspaper. Pricier imported seed open window for local firms. What does that mean? You can start reading it on the front page and continue on page 2. Nigerians buy fuel-efficient cars, drive less to work. Of course, with the way things are moving, a lot of Nigerians have parked their cars at home. We have more eyes, 220 billion naira cash-based informal economy, 90 billion naira unclaimed dividend. How to get yours? You can read that on page 2. Gabon gets transitional president. Tinubu seek AU consensus response. You can find more of that inside the paper. We have a picture story here where we can see Adeleke. You can do well to grab the paper and see what that conversation is all about, and that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, the big story, NFF to Pesero, take pay cut or face sack. You can find more details on page 6. 47,000 fans track Lukaku's flight to Rome. Everton slams 19 billion naira price tag on Iwobi. Leicester City boss gives verdict on Ndidi. You can find details on page 6. Ten Hag in line for new £14 million per year contract. Saka reacts after winning 2023 Men's PFA Young Player Award. Mbappe could sign for Real Madrid. You can find more details inside the paper. Inter hero Osimhen better than Lautaro. Details of that statement can be found on page 6. And on Budapest fallout, we weren't prepared for medals. A statement coming from Okoa. We have Haaland gives hilarious response to potential boxing fight with Mbappe. You can find more details at the back page. Ehanacho wants Crystal Palace move despite deal collapse. And on beach volleyball, Nigeria wins silver at under-20 tournament. The details can be found at the back page. And that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
Well, I'm afraid that's how far we can go to
Yes,
program,
sir.
Rachel. Thank you so much for always doing
You're
this with
welcome.
me. Thank you to our crew members. Thank you to our viewers and also to our supporters for always keeping it there with us. Thank you to the producer, the Echo Executive. Until we come here again, to have a blessed day ahead.